I think that's part of the refining process. Talking about iron sharpens iron. I think this is part of the refining process for each and every one of us to have that personal discipline. Like, I'm going to make time to open my word. I'm going to make time to exercise, or I'm going to make time to pray in my day. Whatever way that looks like. But I think that we have to allow God, being yoked to him, to shape us through that laziness and through that slothfulness, to refine us to who he wants us to be.
You are now listening to the Nights Around the Table podcast.
Welcome back to the Nights Around the Table podcast. As always, I'm Evan, and I have Zach and Jonathan here with me. And this is season 3, episode 2, or episode 22, however you want to think about it. But we're back, just us guys today. And man, I'm gonna tell you, dude. I was just telling Jonathan before we got on that the pollen's got me stuffed up today.
Oh, pollen's it's real, boy. It's real out there.
Yeah. So I apologize if throughout the thing I clear my throat a couple times. I'm gonna try to keep it at a minimum. But yeah, man. Whenever stuff like that hits you, you feel like you don't want to do nothing. And admittedly, I didn't come as prepared as I probably should have today for this one. But no, we're still gonna be able to talk about stuff. So speaking of not doing anything. Something we're going to hit on today is idleness, and the topic of idleness and sloth. Yeah. And so, in episodes past, we've kind of discussed, as men, since we're iron and sharpening iron, we've discussed like work-life balance and the importance of work in a man's life. But this one, we kind of want to take it a little bit different direction and discuss slothfulness, and specifically, and why, what sloth is, and what is it in a work perspective as well as a spiritual perspective, and why as Christians should we steer clear of slothfulness. Yeah,
definitely. It's a very good topic that I don't think gets talked about enough, maybe, because I think it's something that we're all kind of guilty of falling, prey to. And it's something that, honestly can have detrimental effects on your life. And you would not think it. It is something as simple as, taking it easy. It sounds like a good thing. Don't be in a rush. And even though there are practicalities on each one of those, like, it can be good to take it easy. It's good sometimes to take your time, but it's whenever complacency and passiveness sets in that the danger comes. So this is a one of those, for sure, like iron sharpens iron conversations. I guess do you have something to kick us off with? Any ideas of maybe something to set up?
Well, I think of course, when you think of slothfulness, like your first inclination, at least mine is to think, not working at all, right? Like just being completely lazy and not working. And, there's a scripture here, 2 Thessalonians, I believe it's 3, let's see.
10 through 12.
Yeah. So for even when we were with you, sorry if I'm stealing your thunder.
No, you're good.
For even when we were with you, we would give you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, let him eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busybodies. Now such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do their work quietly and to earn their own living. So, that's where my brain first goes when it comes to slothfulness, like, not doing anything versus doing something.
Yeah.
But, as silly as it may seem, when I've been thinking about sloth throughout this week, one of the things I think of is the actual animal of a sloth. And so, like, obviously it still does things. It has to do things to function and to live and to survive. But the idea of a sloth, it works, but it does things in slow motion, like regrettably, like, man, I know I have something to do, but I don't like the purpose in which I'm doing it. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's a couple of conversations we can have for that. Like, one, completely not doing work at all, but number 2, not working out your work with purpose, right?
That's really good.
So, because, when we as Christians, we go back to what our purpose is in work, then we feel more motivated to do the work that he's called us to do,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the things that I was kind of thinking of when you said that is, like work ultimately, a life in productivity brings purpose and fulfillment. You see that with, I don't know if you've ever had, I'm gonna nerd out for a second. Have you ever had a video game that you really like,
Oh yeah.
and then you beat the video game, and then it's like, well, what is there to do now? You feel like your purpose in playing. It's like you were so motivated. Like every time you sat down and played, it's like you had something you were trying to achieve, and it pushed you. And then as soon as you got to that end point, you're like, well, what am I chasing now?
Well, then you increase the difficulties the next step.
Yeah,
and then you
yeah.
go through the whole thing
So
again. Yeah.
it that's kind of I don't know, maybe a geeky way of thinking of it, but having something in that you're in pursuit of and working diligently for gives you motivation. Like you said, it gives you purpose. And something that I was kind of thinking of, speaking of the sloth, is the idea of delay could be disobedience. When I was young, my parents, I remember many times where I would be maybe doing something and my parents say, okay, all right, it's time for you to, stop doing that, come to the table and eat. And I'd be like, all right, just a minute. And I would, and eventually I would stop and fulfill what they asked me to do. Or I'd have a flying right hand come in,
Yeah.
to bring some additional motivation to me. But you when thinking about slothfulness, that delay could be, in fact, disobedience, in whether it's physical, in our physical body, or even in a spiritual sense. And that delay ultimately can set up for bad habits. It can set up for a passiveness, like, okay, I'm not operating now on your terms. I'm now operating. I get to call the shots. I will stop when I want to stop. I will stop when I need to stop. And this is actually a deep conversation that I think we're just getting into.
For sure. I mean, and so to kind of hit on the work idea again, I know we've discussed this in the past, but thinking about what work actually is, way back in the garden, right before even the fall of man, when paradise was perfect and Eden was everything that God intended it to be, and man screwed it up. We still had work back then, and it was always in our DNA, in our design to work, and not for an exhaustive measure, because you didn't have exhaustion back then, but the purpose in your work was to serve God and to worship God through the creative ideas and the creative design that He's given you specifically. And so that's why work is so unique in that way, because we whether you're a nurse or an engineer or a construction worker or a pastor, we all have things that God has, put in each of us specifically that, is our own unique form of worship in that way. And then you have, of course, praise and worship. But ever since the beginning, we were meant to worship. And so when it comes to the lack thereof, then you're talking about something that's almost like anti-God, almost like anti-Christ attitude of not working at all. Because that in itself as idleness is what we're talking about today. So idleness just brings up a whole bunch of issues in my mind, because you get not only are you not fulfilling your creative and your God-given design and what you're supposed to do, but you're also opening the door for other dark things to enter your life, because idle hands are not a good thing to have, because then your mind and your eyes and your hands start gravitating towards different things.
Right.
And so and I know, Keeler, our producer, said something about this too when we were discussing this idea that, work is a form of worship, but it's not everything, that we have a family to focus on too. But we also think that the family portion is work in itself. We have to work, to eat, work to provide, work to support, and then we come home and we work as husbands and fathers, to mentor our kids, to parent our kids, to love our wives. And so it's just work all around. So, the goal, I guess, would be, in my mind, just lack of idleness in general, because idleness is basically kind of coincides and lives with isolation, and He does not call us to live in isolation. So, I don't know, that was a long-winded thing, but
yeah, for sure. And John, feel free to jump in if you have a thought. But man, it's just my mind's just being kind of flooded with some things here. Like, you hear that term, idleness is the devil's playground, and I can't speak for every profession or every Christian or someone walking with the Lord, but statistically speaking, according to Barna, the the area where pastors fail the most is Mondays. They are preparing, all week, really pouring in and crescendoing up till Sunday, and and then you tend to let your guard down a little bit on those Mondays or the day off or whatever it is, where maybe you're not pressing in as much, and sometimes being just slothful and just being kind of like idle in our diligence to walk with the Lord is, could be the downfall, could be the doorway of opportunity for the enemy to come in. Something I was thinking about when you're talking about how we work all the time, and like to hear that on the surface, you're like, yeah, man, the temptation would be, I do need a idle day. Like I need to get away from this. And there is a healthy element to that. However, in the midst of our work, God says, actually, Jesus himself said, take my yoke upon you. Like the yoke is in the field. Like when an ox puts a yoke on, it's working.
Right.
But he says that my yoke is easy. Like my burden is light. And when two traditionally, when you have two oxen in there in a yoke together, they typically put a younger and less experienced oxen with a more veteran, stronger, perhaps even bigger oxen that can almost like train, the other, can take most of the load, can show the other, okay, this is how you go. So when Jesus there says, like, take my yoke upon you, he's not saying you're dismissed and excused from work and from being diligent to your responsibility. What he's saying is, in the midst of that, I will carry the weight of it, okay? And then you can walk in peace, and you can walk in confidence to know that I'm right beside you. And that is what makes the burden light. Yeah. It's not necessarily the workload, it's who's carrying the work. You know what I'm saying? And so being mindful of that, like in the midst of work, you can have rest because you're walking in tune and in step and yoked with the Savior.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that, because also as part of his original design is before the fall was we have 6 days of work and then 1 day of rest, because it imitates what he did for us. And so that idea of yoking yourself to Christ, it shows that he's always there for us in our work, and that in the 6 days that we do work, he is going to be carrying that load. And then the 6th or the 7th day, we can rest in his finished work over our lives and salvation and in his purpose that we have to live out. So, so an interesting thing we talked about setting up for this is that Proverbs mentions that, it says there's always that language, like there are 6 sins that, are evil. Yes, 7. Like it always has the weird language 6 and 7. So, don't do it. Don't do it. No, but it's interesting though, because you have sloth being one of the 7 deadly sins. And so that's interesting to think about, because you obviously in church you hear about a lot of the bigger ones, and to be honest, like this is something that's not really talked about a lot. And so in y'all's opinion, why do you consider, or why does the Word of God consider it to be necessarily like deadly?
If you think about like what you said, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So if you are being lazy, sitting around, not doing anything, you're gonna get bored. You're gonna look for entertainment because you want to be entertained,
right?
And even like before you had the access of internet through your phone and the convenience of that, before the internet even existed, it was still the same thing. You're still looking for entertainment, because even if you're bored, you won't. I don't know how to, be occupied. You want to be entertained, so you start looking for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, that's when the devil jumps into action, starts throwing everything at you. I don't know if you ever do start sitting around and get a moment like that. All of a sudden, these opportunities just present themselves. It's not a coincidence. So if you're staying active, staying busy, you don't have time to do that, and you're focused on whatever task you're doing. Normally, like you said, it's 38 different tasks you got going all at the same time, and they're all priorities and equally important. So, you don't have time to do stuff like that. So you're not tempted or even have the ability to do anything because you're so focused. So, and then when you said that whatever task you're doing, you do it kind of regrettingly, or you don't want to do it. But when you put it like you do it with purpose and do everything as you do it unto God.
Yeah.
Then it takes a whole new meaning. Even though you don't want to do it, it's something you have zero interest in. You put forth your best effort, and then you don't have the slothfulness. You don't have the regret of turning in something, and all of it falls back on you too. So when you do a task and you turn it in, or someone takes possession of it, like I do, construction, or you do engineering. When you turn a project in to your customer or client, whoever, even if it's the help, like the church over here doing that, when you turn in and there's issues from top to bottom, that's your reputation. That's your name.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you got to have pride in that. Be like, I don't want people to associate me with, lesser.
Right.
I want to be quality.
Right.
So every task you do, be quality. And, you're elite quality. And, that'll keep you out of trouble, one. And two, when you do get those days where you need some rest and the slothfulness, you'll be focused on resting and slothful or recovery versus, trying to be entertained.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that idea of entertainment, that just made me think of, whenever he did give the command to work in the garden, the Hebrew word for that is avodah. And, it's work, but it also, anytime you see like serving God, I delivered the Egyptians out of Egypt so they can serve me in the wilderness. It's the same word there. So it's not just a manual labor just for the sake of getting something in return. It's a service to something or to a higher purpose.
Right.
And so the entertainment aspect you bring up makes me think of like the reason why it may be such a deadly sin is that ultimately it's like a self-serving idleness, and slothfulness is like a self-serving characteristic. Because when our service and our work does not become, others focused and like goal focused, even what God's given us to do versus like, this makes me feel better. Like, and it should, obviously it should bring a pride, but at the same time, if that's the only reason, or if you're just doing it because it's a task to be done, then you're not seeing the bigger picture. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not seeing the others aspect that God has asked us to do.
Yeah.
In serving one another as
That's
a community.
Yeah. And also slothfulness can be like one of the reasons it could be the 6 or 7 deadly sins is it could be a gateway for the other 5 or 6 sins.
That's
so
right.
if you again, that idleness, and then you start looking around and one thing is like dominoes. They just keep creeping in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of different types of slothfulness too. It's not just like manual labor slothfulness. It could be slothfulness in habits, like daily habits, whether it's eating habits or exercise. Some of these things are like words that we just don't even like to hear. Like, you need to exercise more, or you need to eat better.
Yeah.
This is something that within the last probably 2 or so years, 3 years, like God really has been like working with me on is like really making sure that I'm diligent in my pursuit of Him in every area of my life. Because there's some areas that, maybe I'm really passionate about and I'm really dedicating myself to. And then there are other areas that, that slothfulness has really just, like you said, opened up that doorway for us to be very passive and just like complacent. And like, honestly, what I've kind of come to realize is like laziness literally rots what God is trying to grow in your life. It does. And I think that's why, it's considered one of the deadly sins because,
it makes you sedentary. Like it's,
right.
Like you say, kind of that with the exercise thing. If you never get up and move, you're just,
right.
you're gonna,
right.
get
And
extremely unhealthy.
Exactly. And so like, the way I kind of, I think of it as, I don't know where I heard this from, but I've heard it used, military, like drill instructors have gone and done speeches and stuff. And I listened to, it wasn't a drill instructor. It was someone that come out of the military that was speaking at a graduation, I believe is what it was. And the guy was like giving life advice to all these graduates. And he was like, wake up every day and make your bed. He's like, that's step one. Like, wake up every day and make your bed. And he's like, you may feel like that's a silly thing to do, or like, why would I do that? But he's like, you are holding down discipline in your life. Like, that's what basically they teach in the military. You wake up, I've never been in the military, but you wake up and you make your bed, and it's got to be like, you pay attention to every detail. Every crease is out of it. Like pay attention to the details. And he even said, go for a run, first thing in the morning, because he said that's the worst thing possibly that you can do all day. And you just go on and get it out of the way. Just make the very first thing you do is something that you absolutely don't want to do. And he's like, and if you create these little healthy habits in your life about approaching something head on, then you'll be very successful. And that seems kind of silly, but it really makes a lot of sense. Discipline is a big deal. And in fact, one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control, like being able to look at something or address something that you really want to do and say, no, like there's something better I need to do. And I might not want to do it. It might hurt, but like, this is what I need to do. And, I think that's part of the refining process. Talking about iron sharpens iron. I think this is part of the refining process for each and every one of us to have that personal discipline. Like, I'm going to make time to open my word. I'm going to make time to exercise, or I'm going to make time to pray in my day. Whatever way that looks like. But I think that we have to allow God, being yoked to him, to shape us through that laziness and through that slothfulness, to refine us to who he wants us to be.
Yeah, I definitely grew up in the make your bed every morning household. Both my stepfather and my father, taught that, and they stress that because of the same reason. If you start out your day and you have a goal already accomplished, then it already gets your mindset even in the right spot. Like, if you walk in, or you wake up and you do all your other things and not do that, you neglect that, then your mindset's going to be more negative oriented throughout the day versus positive. I mean, even down to the little doctor's hospital corners, getting them all, triangular and, tucked in and all. So I'm used to that. And when it comes to spiritually too, I think of when he says that faith without works is dead. So, obviously slothfulness is a physical thing, and that's where our minds go to first, is that it's like laziness or idleness, and then you have the spiritual aspect, or before that you had the discipline aspect as far as health and eating right. But then the third aspect, I think, is the working out your salvation, and obviously saved by grace. But what I mean is whenever he saves us, we are supposed to have good works, and work out these fruits of the Spirit that he's given us. And so even when we become saved as Christians, we get his Holy Spirit, we are almost wasting his gift that he's given us by not working out
That's exactly what we're doing.
Those gifts.
Yeah.
And so, for sure, that's a big thing. And but it's funny too, growing up, I know we're not getting into story time now unless we want to.
Oh, sure. Throw it out there.
So, I mean, it's not a huge story, but there was one time that I was my parents were building the house that we grew up in, for the majority of our childhood. And speaking of work, we were going out there, and we were edging the edge of the pine straw. And I don't know if I've told the story or not. I may have already, so forgive me if I did. But we were edging the edge of the pine straw in the beds. And of course, I didn't want to work. I was, I was a teenager and, didn't feel like doing anything. And so we were edging this bed, and he said, once we get this edging in, I'm going to have you cut the grass. He's like, and I know how you cut the grass. Don't cut the grass on high speed and whip it around these turns. He's like, because you're going to end up tearing all this edging up. And so I was like, all right, cool. And so then, of course, come time to do the cutting the grass, and lo and behold, I come hot, on that turn, and I'm high speed in the lawnmower, and the next thing here is, all on the edge. And my stepdad's working up at the mailbox, and he hears it, and he has a shovel in his hand. Not to kid you not, that shovel, he tossed that thing, and it's sitting there doing like this in the air. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was mad too, boy. And he always taught that skill in me as far as, work everything you do as unto the Lord. And one of the things he used to say too, I used to love, was a saying. He said, where you been at, Blister? I'm like, what you mean? He's like, showing up after the work's done. And so that's just something he would always say. And I thought that was so funny.
That's a good one.
But yeah, that's my little work story.
Oh, I've got some work stories. And like you said, this might be an improv stories with the boys. But did y'all hear, John, did you hear about my most recent
Your
injury?
electrical
Did you hear
situation?
about that?
I heard.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Through the grapevine?
The cliff notes of it.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I've learned, whenever I was growing up, Dad was like the Swiss Army knife of maintenance and construction. Like, it didn't matter if it was a broken go-kart engine or like if it was like something broke, in our treehouse. Regardless, he always had the tool. He always fixed it and did it well. And that's something I admired, and I really want to be that way myself. So when a problem happens at the house, I'm like, I want to fix it. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to have the knowledge to do so. But I don't always have the experience to do so. And that can be a little tricky. That's where YouTube comes in. All right. And a little 5-minute video clip on YouTube will go a long ways. And not a problem. I can handle it. I'm not an electrician. I'm going to just put a little note out there right now to let everybody know.
I don't mess with no electricity.
I do my very best. But this particular day, we were going out of town. We had some people staying over at our house to kind of like house sit for us while we were gone, watch our dog and all that. So like my wife, Kristen, had this big grocery list of things that she wanted done around the house to prepare for that. One of the items on my list was change the recess lighting out. Now, our recess light are like those little wafer LEDs. So like there's no really like a light bulb. Like you have to replace the whole little contraption. Well, my recess lights, they do not make currently anymore. So I had to change the junction box out with the light. Yeah. So I can't just unplug the light and plug a new one back in. I have to unwire it and then rewire it. So I tell my dad what I'm going to do. And, he's like, well, all you need to do is just cut the light switch off. And you ain't got to worry about it. And you can get up there and do whatever you need to do. And I was like, that's perfect. Because I needed the light to be turned on, because I never done this before. And I didn't know if these actually were the right lights. Like I needed Chris. It was supposed to be a team effort. Chris was going to be on the bottom. After I got it installed, she was going to cut the light on and be like, yeah, it works. And so, but before I went up there, we had a family meeting. I brought everybody into the room. And I told Mason and Madison, I told everybody, all right, I'm going up in the attic. I'm going to be changing these lights out. I want you to understand, nobody turned this kitchen light on. Nobody. And everybody's like, okay. And I was like, repeat what I just said. Everybody's like, we're not going to turn the kitchen light on. I was like, great.
Then you go and you're supposed to turn the breaker off anyway.
Well, I needed the breaker. Oh, I was trying to shortcut it. So that was the problem. So I got up there and it was a pain in the behind to get to. And I'm having to straddle these like rafters and stuff and laying on my belly. The wiring is incredibly difficult to get undone. And anyway, but I finally got everything done, put the first one in, piece of cake, And I was like, this is easy. Went to the next one. The next one is like up against like our ridge of our roof, or pitch of our roof kind of comes down. The recessed light is like kind of like in that close to the wall. So you're having to literally crawl on your belly. Mm-hmm. So nevertheless, I get halfway undone, taking that one apart. And all of a sudden, the biggest volt of electricity I've ever felt in my life shoots through my body, and it knocks the box out my hand, and I'm like, good Lord. And I'm up there like screaming. I can hear Kristen has Alexa, our little dot, playing in the kitchen with music, and everybody's down there singing and dancing. And I'm above them in insulation going like, hey, and they can't hear me because it's like pretty much soundproof. And So, and I can't get to my phone because I'm like wedged up in this corner. So I'm like trying to get to my phone, and I finally get to my phone, and I call Kristen, and I am furious. Like I'm like, I am hot. And
in more than ways than one.
yeah, she picked up the phone. I was like, who cut the kitchen light on? And she's like, I don't know. I'm not in there. I'm in the room dusting our fan. What happened? Okay. My daughter Madison, at school, in their classroom, if somebody spills something or makes a mess while they're going to retrieve the items to clean it up, they slide a chair over the mess so nobody steps in it. So from the first recess light, I had dust and a bunch of stuff that came off the roof or off the ceiling, and it made this little dust pile underneath that light. Well, Madison, not thinking, she slid her little chair over the dust pile and cut the light on, and was going to get Kristen to show her like I cleaned up, like I did something good. You'd be proud of me. In the meantime, in doing so, she fried me up there, and it's hard to be kind of super mad at her, but nevertheless. So after I get done with all that, I go to get down, and when I get up to walk down the ladder, I cannot feel my right leg. And I'm thinking that the ladder I'm thinking that I probably just laid on it wrong. Like, it's just asleep. That's what it felt like. It's asleep. So I'm like limping around and stuff. But I realized after I come down, like it has taken everything out of me. And anyway, point is I found out that apparently like because I was hit with 110 volts or whatever it is, that's enough to kill a man. And I didn't realize that. Like there's stories of people that have died with that amount, and the electricity exited apparently out of my right leg, and I limped around for probably 3 or 4 weeks, not being able to feel my feet, having numbness in my toes. I'm better now, but I guess the whole moral of this story is in the middle of your work and in your diligence, make sure, element of slothfulness, not to cut corners, cut the breaker off, do things right, because often when you cut corners, that's when problems happen.
Yep, that's not a uncommon story for that particular incident.
I'm telling you. Sorry, real quick. I was just going to say that, man. When I go to change a light bulb, even a light bulb, man, the whole system goes. It's like the apocalypse happened.
Cut the breaker, the main
dude.
light.
Yeah,
if I can't guard over there,
no, if I can't see it, I'm not working on it. Or I'm not taking my chances. It's just a scary thing, man. You can't see it moving or nothing.
Yeah.
You just have to.
when you were a kid, your dad's designated light holder, like flashlight. So we had issues like that, all the time. And I remember we were up under the house one time, basically the same scenario, wiring up something, and I had no idea what we were doing. But anytime any chore or task had to be done, I didn't have an option. If I had to just go sit there and look at him, I had to go. Which, I mean, I guess there's a lot to that. You learn a lot, but it's an experience. Yeah. So I was down there, and he's getting ready to wire up this thing. And I remember him, and you, even at that young age, you understand, like, maybe not the severity of it, but you understand, like, this is live action we're playing with right now. There's some consequences going to come from this. So I always had this respect for it. Like, I was like you. I ain't just diving into that.
I probably had it to an extreme, too, because I told Zach one time, I'm like, when you see those scenes in the movies with the bombs, like, it'll speed the sweat coming. They have the little scissors. That's about how I approach electricity.
That was my understanding of it too. Because like you said, you can't see electricity.
Yeah.
But that wire, it's going through there. That thing harnesses power. So I'm like, I don't understand it. Can't see it. I'm giving it its space. So my dad's like out there going to wire this stuff together, and he understands like this situation too. So he looks at me and hands me this not a monkey wrench, a pipe wrench. It was about that big. It was massive. He said, all right, I'm about to hook this thing up. And if it starts, I can't remember how he worded it, but he said, if it starts to shock me, I can't let go. And I'll just be sitting like, so you take this wrench and you throw it at me. And that way I was like, is this really your plan? I mean, this is the whole setup here.
It's like what is it in the tabernacle, like the priest with the bells on there with the ropes, right?
You just pull them out.
I was thinking more like Marv off of Home Alone. Yeah. He gets lit up.
Oh, yeah.
So I have my pipe wrench and I was cocked back ready to deliver the saving blow, but nothing came
Never
up.
came
But I
to
mean,
that.
that was like just, and all the time situations like that. All right, if I get shot, don't touch me. Hit me with this wrench. Because the electricity will travel through or whatever. So
Isn't it funny the old way, like the old safety like things? Like I remember the day we didn't have to wear seatbelts like very much.
yeah.
You know what I mean? You could just
Yeah.
kind of stand up in the back or
we
whatever.
when I was first getting it, they cut them out of the car because they'd be in the way.
They were a nuisance.
Yeah, they tuck them down in the seat.
So it-
And
you know,
now we have car seats that expire like milk, you know,
Yeah.
for the babies.
you know, you do hear, and the part of the reason why we are where we are now with society, as far as you know, got all these different safety features in place, is because somewhere along the line, somebody was cutting a corner or somebody was trying to get away with something, and it bit them. It like my dad used to have. You know, the little guard on your skill saw that comes around and protects. You
They
just put a
drop a
little
wedge
wedge,
in it, yeah.
wedge up in there. So you have it exposed. And that was so the framers and different ones could just keep cutting and not have that getting in the way. It was speed, but it was disregarding something. It was safety. There are some guys that would take the little, in the nail guns, you know, they would just like, I don't know exactly if they would wrap the trigger with, I don't know how they would do it, but they got where they could just basically tap the nail gun and not have to
Like
go
bump
through-
stock for a nail gun.
Yeah, and they could, you know, go fast like roofers or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, but all those things lead to potential problems, and that's the same thing with this conversation. You know, like you may feel like we're still accomplishing what we're trying to do, but that discipline, that letting your foot off the gas and coasting a little bit, that just opens up the door for just us to continue to coast, even in things that are important, like the responsibilities as a husband or our walk with the Lord. It's important not to be a consumer and allow our consumer culture to overtake the walk with the diligence that we need to have in walking with the Lord and fulfilling the roles here on this earth.
Yeah, that's almost like the opposite problem with idleness is like working for the wrong motivation.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, because obviously when you're idle, you serve self, but if you're working for the wrong reason, you can serve self too. And so, just as you mentioned, like if you cut corners or you're even if you're, you know, like the parable with, or not the parable, but the guy who came to Jesus and says, "What must I do to inherit the kingdom of God?" Like,
yeah.
you know, according to him, he done everything right. Like he done all the works that he needed to do, but it was the heart behind his work that was not, you know, good. And of course, you know, he was unwilling to sell everything he had and give to the poor. But that's definitely another side of it is, you know, when we're given a task, when we're, you know, charged with something, then, you know, we do it to the best of our ability and for his glory. So,
Right.
Not for our own self-interest, because we end up screwing up sometimes when we do that. But yeah, I figured a time or two between construction and, you know, you and your dad working together, you'd have some interesting stories when it came to that. So
A whole lot of them. I mean, all right, well, when I was probably 23, 24, 25, I was hauling dirt for we had a customer up in Edmond, or right before you got to Pillion anyway, where the Peanut is going into Pillion, that gas station, right behind it, they have storage units now. Well, they were building that, so I was hauling them dirt in there. And one time I dumped the load and was pulling out from under the load, and the top of the truck got into the power lines. Ooh. It started arcing. It was scary. Like when you said you got hit, I was thinking, because I've heard horror stories about it too, and I was thinking like this could be really bad. So I hit the brakes and I heard it pop and then arcing. The whole time it was sitting there arcing and shooting sparks everywhere. So I called my dad immediately, and I had just gotten a cell phone. Like this is my first cell phone, and big old block thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I called him. I said, "Hey, hit some power lines with the truck when I was dumping it, and I'm stuck in them. It's spraying. I don't know what to do." And he's like, "All right, don't move. I'm coming." So evidently he called I think we called 911. I can't remember. And they sent, no, my dad was the first one there. Dominion came out there. It was back SC&G back then, but they were on their way out there. I forget who else. Like, we had a massive party out there gathering. And when my dad got there, he got there about 5 minutes before the man from SC&G. And he said, all right, this is what I want you to do. Like he's supposed to like know everything. Like your dad knows everything.
Because
You got all
in
that.
theory, if you stay in your truck, you stay grounded, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there's rubber. I don't know. I didn't investigate it.
because
but
I heard it's
yeah.
dangerous to get out your van
Yeah.
though or get out your vehicle when you do
Over a
that. 'Cause
certain like area to it. 'Cause
Yeah.
the whole area is charged or something. I didn't. This is what the man was telling me after he got there, but my dad comes up and he kind of, I guess, knew some of this, knew the theory of it behind it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, he has the answers. Whatever he's gonna lead me to safety. He's gonna look out for my best interest here. So he walks up to me and he's like, all right. Now he didn't walk right up to me. He walks up to about probably 30 feet from the truck. He said, all right, this is what I want you to do. You listen? I said, yeah. And I'm focused. I'm thinking my life's on the line here. I want you to get on the little step right there and jump as far as you can. and I said, and I was with it up to this point, I'm with him. I'm like, all right, this is the answer I gotta have right here. And he said that. I sat back and I said, anything you say right now, you need to go away. And so then it was about another 5 minutes. The man come up there. He said, no, do not do anything like that. So he goes over, he's got his little pole, goes up to the transformer and just flips the breaker, cuts it off. He's all right, you can get out now. So, and I was like, yeah, wasn't that better? So, but I mean, like we said, electricity is, and it's a good, like, the slothfulness. Don't take the shortcuts.
Yeah.
And another thing I just thought of, like, we have in construction, you have OSHA, who has rules to keep you safe. So you don't take those shortcuts, and it's almost like a safety net. Well, there is no safety net in your spiritual. There's just rules and consequences.
That's right.
So it's up to you, and when you don't have the discipline or or you start getting lazy, that slothfulness kicks in, you will face consequences. There is no.
Well, and it's funny you say that because, I mean, obviously, like, you don't get a trial run necessarily of, the mistakes that you make. But, when it comes to the things that we should avoid and not do, there's plenty of, at least warning about it. Like, whenever you do these things, it'll lead to.
And you got the little Jiminy Cricket in you. I guess the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
But that you always get that weird feeling of, man, I don't know if this is right. Sometimes you just blow right past it.
Right.
But when it starts screaming real loud, you're like, you know what? And then a lot of times I'll be doing something and right at the last critical moment, it's like a hot flash comes up and you're like, then all of a sudden your eyes just, you get awakened to everything that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, that's something I guess God put into us as human nature to kind of assist you or help you. But all the time. And then you'll get the hot flashes of what could have happened if you kept going or how bad it could have been.
Yeah.
Like you ever like almost run a red light or something and then you just sit there and get all beet red.
No, I've done it where I've run one and I'm like, man, that could have been bad.
Yeah. And it's like, everything starts flashing and you're like, man, I hate those feelings.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. That's something that it's like you said, Evan, like, I don't think do enough diligence in talking about this and keeping, this in front of our minds, the importance of staying focused, which is something that I guess will lead us into some questions here. And continuing on this conversation, these are excellent questions. Typically it's questions from the basket. Today is questions from the iPhone. Keeler our producer texts in some questions that I think we'll just continue to dig a little bit deeper in this conversation. I think that's going to be really good. So question one from our producer here from the questions list is there a such thing as working too much?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to the idea of 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, you know, and not that it needs to be weighted as such necessarily, but obviously, he's intended for us to rest, periodically.
But it depends on what your definition of work is. If you are, like you said, when you come home, being with your family's work also.
Yeah.
So, 1 day a week, you are biblically supposed to rest. But, if you have to provide for your family, and if you don't have food, you don't have, shelter or clothing, you got to keep working to get them. So, whether it's too much or too little, you don't really have an option. So it's hard to tell somebody that, is working 2-3 jobs and still barely getting by that they're working too much. It's like, well, yeah, I am. But I mean, what option do I have? So it's it's tough to say that, or give a definite answer. Because there's so many different variables. But at the same time, yes, your family's your priority. You being the man here, you're responsible for their clothing, shelter, and food, the 3 things that are necessity. And then obviously you got to give them attention, love, and then leadership, discipline, and then keep God first, teach them all that. But I mean,
well, in a lot of ways too, that six days of work and 1 day of rest, it kind of models our spiritual life as well, and our salvation and how it works. Because originally, Shabbat or the Sabbath was on Saturday, which would have been the last day of the week.
Day.
So, 7th day, and so the Old Testament, He gave us the law, He gave His people the law, and to be holy, you work, and then you rest in Him and rest in His glory.
Yeah.
Whenever that order didn't, necessarily work out, and not because of the law, because of the people, then, you see that order flip in the New Testament where, rises on Sunday. Now our new week is Sunday's our day of rest. Then you have work the rest of the way. So you rest in His finished work, and then you work because He saved you. You rest in Him, and then because of the joy and because of the thankfulness and gratitude, you work out the rest of your salvation because of Him. And so, anyway, long story short, I think it does mirror, and I get what you're saying, because there's so many things that hinge on us, our efforts, and hinge on balancing those efforts. But yeah, it's
I would say it's that fine line, and we covered this actually. I think maybe in last season 2, could have been season 1. That balance in life is anytime you prioritize anything in your life, in the sense that it becomes your sole focus, and then you put God in the back seat. That can be the dangerous part. It's just like you said, you can be in the middle of working all the time and still find rest and still find that balance and that time with the Lord. So yeah, to each their own. What does working too much look like? If you have kids at home, I don't know. Everyone has to kind of just balance that in themselves, work out their own little salvation, so to speak. But we just have to be mindful of that, like finding that balance there.
For sure, because I feel like if you're working on something and there's another area of your life that's neglected, then there may be an imbalance of work that is happening to where maybe the work is becoming idolatrous to a certain degree. Yeah. Because it's all about balancing I say work-life balance, but it's really work in all areas, working at my marriage, working at my, being there for my kids, working at work to actually feed my kids. So.
Right. And it's like you said, that word work, we think of manual labor, like something, hard and like taxing. But it's like you mentioned, the Hebrew word for that actually is derived from worship. So, it's almost like in everything we do through, our work, it's almost like our work is worshiping the Lord. So whether we're hammering a nail or driving down the road, everything we're doing is for the glory of God. So, that's such a deep question there. All right. Thoughts on vacation. I don't know where she wants us to go with that.
Well, my thought was, okay, are you lazy if you're going on vacation?
I think I know what you're going.
Okay.
You're going at.
I like
with
that.
it.
Lazy. Are you?
I've heard the same argument about like retirement, for example.
Retirement.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
what is your argument you heard on retirement?
Well, no, I'm not argument, but I'm saying I've heard people ask the question.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Like is retirement like
biblical or
technically
something?
Slothfulness?
Right.
Like, is that what
Exactly.
you're
Like
saying?
I've done my time. Now I can just chill. At least that's the question.
Okay.
But no, regarding vacation, it's interesting. So, again, I think, if you look throughout Scripture, the order of everything is, and I'm beating a dead horse, but it's always work, rest, work, rest. It's that's the order. And so, you see, it's common to see, even in the Old Testament, you see after 6 years of, toiling the field, their 7th year, the field gets a rest, right? And then what is it like? The seventh set of 7 years is the Jubilee year, and you don't really do anything, and the field reaps what it does naturally, and you give everything a rest. So the concept of vacation, I think personally, I would think it kind of would fall into that same category.
So every 7 years, you supposed to go on vacation.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, finding that balance. I mean, even Jesus would withdraw himself from the crowds and from ministry to be alone.
Yeah.
And
Well, I don't necessarily know that it's saying vacation like, or what we're interpreting vacation same. So I'm thinking work nowadays, your 9 to 5 is totally different than what it looked like back then. It was more of a survival thing. Yeah. Now with technology and everything, it's not necessarily, I have to get this much food in order to eat for these. I have to make this much productivity in order to get finances to buy and trade, whatever. So it's kind of changed. And I guess it's more, the vacation nowadays is more of the 9 to 5 versus the whole work aspect like you're talking about.
Right.
Like if you look at the people who retire, most of them, now I'm sure there's one or two that could retire and just slothfulness, let it all go. But for the most part, like Keeler's grandparents just recently retired. I say recently, what about 5 years ago, maybe a little longer. Anyway, when they retired, they quit going to his 9 to 5, but he didn't quit being productive and working.
Right.
Now he is doing so much, if not more, but not at a 9 to 5. It's spread out, but getting a lot accomplished still. So he still has purpose. He still has drive. It's just not the same. So I'm thinking the vacation aspect would be more of your 9 to 5 grind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unload, take a load off from that, kind of unwind, and then recharge your batteries, go back to that. But you're not letting go of life and your focus and your purpose of, what would be work everywhere else.
Yeah, and let me just say this. I'm going to geek out here for a second. So if you take 1 day a week, right, and divide it by 7 days a week, this is my engineer coming out, get 14.2%. So 14.2% of your time you rest, right? If you do 7 days,
A week?
Yeah, that's a week. So 14% of your week is resting.
All right.
So this is crazy. This is getting down to the weeds, but hey, math,
I like it.
math can explain everything.
I like it.
So you got 7 days out of the year. So let's just say, of course, some people vacation more than that. Let's just say you take a week a year on vacation. So 7 days divided by 52, 13.5%. So, hey, maybe the math lines up.
Hey.
A week?
Ooh, sleeping. I didn't factor that in.
You didn't factor in we get lost right there. You didn't factor your weekends, your July 4th. So, but you're right. But again, it's not, that's your 9 to 5 we're talking about. So if you look at your work aspect, like we're talking about, like we do a lot of work here at church. You do a lot of work at school. Like my kids' school asks for volunteers all the time for some kind of stuff. And there's work in your community. Raising your kids is work. Keeping your house going is always work. And none of that takes a vacation.
Right.
There is zero time off from that. So, I mean, you don't...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you hit it perfectly, John. Because again, our definition of work is skewed to that 9 to 5, but like working on my marriage, and work is not always a bad thing. Like work with your children could just be being present, like interacting, giving yourself, giving your time. So
that's very huge. Because I mean, it's like you said, I definitely have that problem. When I think work, I interpret it as all physical, being, in the office designing, or me, slinging hammers, whatever, physical work versus, marriage and everything else you're talking about.
Yeah, one last point on the retirement thing. There are some people who choose to, in retirement, they choose to kind of waste it away, so to speak. But, I think that one of the most beautiful things that I see is, you dedicate your whole entire career and your life's work to a craft, and you perfect that craft and you work years on it. And then the way that I would like to see retirement when it comes, Lord willing, that time for me is that basically, God has finished with me in that particular craft for the years that He let me do it. And I get to dedicate that time now to other forms of ministry. Like, how can I best serve my community in that time, you know? And, of course, you know, there's like some pleasure and stuff and all that too, but, I think it gives you a new opportunity to see maybe what God else, you know, what else he has for you and how you can serve others.
That's amazing. My father-in-law is a great example of what you just said. Most of my wife's life, really almost all of my wife's life, her dad owned a plumbing business. And I mean, her mom was the one that had to come to all of her school activities, her little sports events, her assemblies, all those little things. It was all her, for the most part, her mom, because her dad is out on the job. She would
Had his own business.
Yeah. She, and, you know, he would get up before the sun comes up. He'd get back home when the sun is already down. And you had like a very limited amount of time with his family. And since retiring, and I'm not kidding you, I think he is more busy now, but on the farm, you know, and with the grandkids and going on road trips with his wife. And
so he's refocused. It still works, but it's refocused from.
And, you know, I think almost like in physics, an object in motion stays in motion.
Yeah.
I think if let's say that you are working, and then you come in, you go like, all right, I'm just going to sit here. I think it's like you said, you lose that purpose, you lose your drive. Ultimately, there's examples even, and I've seen, you know, in folks that have passed, you know, there'll be a healthy lady and her husband passes, and then it's like all of a sudden she loses that purpose. You know, she feels like she loses
I've
her
heard
drive.
that, like if you,
and I mean, I'm talking from peak health.
Yeah.
In like just a few years.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that when they retire. Like when you lose purpose in, like if you don't have people that need you or something to fulfill every day, week, year, whatever, and then you're just kind of like withering away. You have no reason for existing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's harsh. Maybe not quite like that. But yeah, I've heard like it's your health takes a huge hit initially, and then it doesn't take long for you to go. But so that's why you always, and it's hard to say that because you look at all the, you know, people in the world, people die from all ages, and then there would be somebody who lives to be 120. Right. So, I mean, it's hard to give a definite on that, but I've heard that theory mentioned many times.
Well, you had to continually work out your muscles because, you know, as you might know, you know, being in the hospital bed for a while, you know,
I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting.
Yeah, your muscles. Well, even me too, because you know, this past year I dislocated my kneecap, and even not putting as much weight or whatever, it's not even nowhere close to what you did. So
it's
I've been there too, but no. But no, seriously though, whenever you don't use those muscles as much, you know, when you don't work them out, they're prone to wasting away, atrophying, you know, and things. And so the same concept being when you retire, if you don't work out your muscles, then you know, you're kind of just going to waste away.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a really, really good conversation here. Question number 3 out of her 4 questions that she sent in. Actually, she has a bonus question. So this next question is discuss use one of today's common phrases, protect my peace, right or wrong. I don't think she typed it correctly, but I think I know what you're saying. So discuss the idea of I need to protect my peace, like, I guess is what you're saying, right?
I've never
that
heard
must
that.
be like a Gen Z. Are you a Gen Z? She's a millennial.
She's a millennial.
Does that mean like your family?
Yeah, people will be like, well, I got to protect my peace. Like, I don't want to do it. So
Okay.
I don't do that.
Yeah,
I've
like
never heard
this
that.
doesn't. This is like I don't want to do this. Like just let me protect my peace. Yeah, it's a cop out. Let me say this. I think there is something to be said about the generation that comes up. That everybody receives a trophy for participating.
I cannot stand that.
I want to tell you, and I'm part of that wave that came through. That I started out as being like, you earn it, you work. There's a winner,
and there's a loser.
Everybody else is losers. And you just
and you do it.
Like and most of my life I had that, but as I got older, I was just at the tip of the spear of being part of that generation that now instead of no, everybody's a winner. I want to let you know right now that is not true. All right,
It's not true.
I mean, we may all participate, but there are winners and there are losers. And yeah, you can absolutely just existing doesn't mean you are succeeding, and just existing doesn't mean you are growing or
And it
that
doesn't
you
mean
are
you're owed
accomplishing
something.
and that you're owed something. That's exactly right. So this whole protect my peace thing, and it's like, no, I don't want to do that because it's going to, mess up my my mental health or whatever like that. Like there's a slothful mindset that has been embedded, in our generation. Oh, she said preach. Yeah. There's a slothful mindset. And sometimes that gets passed on through education systems. Sometimes that is passed on through political parties. Like, hey, just trust us. We'll take care of you. You don't have to work.
Sure.
Just put it in. And again, these are all tools that the enemy can use.
Well, everybody's
What
looking
I
for
think-
security.
Yeah, think about it. There's technology that comes along that makes your life easier, and and how tempting it is to want to make your life easier.
Right.
Like you don't have to turn even your light switch on anymore. You say, "Hey Alexa, turn my lights off for me." As if that was much effort to begin with. And the
Where
same.
it used to be a candle, and you had to go light the candle,
Keep it filled with the
make
oil.
my candle,
Yeah, right.
Right.
and now
now I'm just inconvenienced by flicking a switch. And it's the same.
Yeah.
Same thing with this is getting down the wormhole.
No, bring it on.
But with AI, and all the things like that. I mean, it is good, but all those tools, if not used and harnessed correctly, can make you a lazy person.
Yes, it can.
Yeah, and it can also make you dependent on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then
Yes.
you don't know how to do anything. So when that stuff runs out, or someone has control over your life, because if they know how to do that,
Right.
you have to rely on them because
Yeah.
you don't know anything. So it's a dangerous spot to be in.
For sure.
It sure is. I think that is, often in the Bible, what Jesus is and who he is counterculture and almost intuitive, really. And so, there's nothing wrong with being part, having these things in our lives. But it's like you said, being counterculture in the sense, we're not going to let these things become a source. We're going to let them, be a resource, but not the source. Like, and walking with the one who is the source.
Because there's an argument to be made if it makes a certain area more efficient, then you turn that extra time into more work. Like you turn it into more productivity,
It
right?
does do that.
Yeah, 'cause,
that's the consistence with everything technology that's ever been invented or created.
Sure, like innovations in construction practice or engineering or whatever the thing is. We don't use that time just to say now I have all this extra spare time.
How much more can I do now?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a different mindset you can have with it. As technology grows, you grow in production.
That's great. Yeah, so that's just harnessing that and pointing in the right direction. Okay, next question. You're volunteering but not enjoying it. What should you do?
So ask a producer.
You keep going.
She's not enjoying always being in the corner.
What if you're producing a podcast and you really hate listening to it every week?
What do you do? Unplug your earphones. No, if so.
Why are you volunteering to begin with?
Yeah, there's a lot more that we need to understand about this question. Like, is it a faith-based volunteer, or are we at if it's at church? Because that's different than if you're at, like, let's say our school or something like that, or picking up trash on the side of the road.
And the question, I guess, could apply to those things too.
It could, but
Okay, the heart of this question is what specifically in the church?
At the church, you're
Volunteering.
Say you're supposed to go work on Saturday.
Okay.
You don't want to work, but you show up anyway.
Okay.
Your heart's not in it. Your heart is.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Your heart's not in it, but you show up.
well,
anyway.
there's days that you don't ever want to get up out of bed. There's always those days. So if you ever feel like you don't want to do it, but did you commit to do it beforehand? Is it something that you are a vital contribution to or contributor to? Will you make a difference when you get there? If you're just going to go there and look at them, yeah, you're probably, unless they need you there cheering them on, supporting them, handing them water, whatever, or, say, yeah, that board needs to be moved over 2 inches. I would probably not go. But if you're going to go there and be a vital asset, then yeah. But that's, even if your heart's not in it, there's days you don't want to, you don't feel it, but you got to power through it if you are, if people rely on you.
Yeah, I'll say this. There's no pastor that's going to sit up here and on any microphone and say, like, we don't want volunteers. In fact, they'd say the opposite. Please, we need more volunteers. But I'll say this. When I was getting marriage counseling from our bishop at the time, Bishop Greg Amos, he told me from a perspective of a pastor, because that's what I was when I was getting married. I just stepped in ministry. He said, church will kill and destroy your marriage if you let it. And what he meant by that was not that church was a bad thing. It's that when you prioritize things in out of order and you put things ahead of what you're supposed to do, or you're operating outside of your calling, it is not healthy. And so to our volunteers or to anyone serving, I will say this: you have a calling on your life. Every one of us has a calling, and it's our job to answer that calling when he calls us. There's also going to be times that you are serving the least of these, or serving in a ministry that, yes, like John said, like, you probably don't want to come out there. But I will guarantee you that the farmer, when he plants the seed, doesn't always feel like going out in the garden and pulling weeds and working that field day after day after day.
Yeah.
But he's doing it for a reason and a purpose, the harvest. So that, keeping that in mind and understanding that is going to be very important. That sometimes work is, sometimes, serving the community is not the most glamorous thing, when you could be watching TV at home, but you're doing it for a purpose. And in that purpose, you will find fulfillment. My third thing that I'll say is this: when you are operating outside of your calling and doing something that God never intended for you to do, that's whenever burnout happens. Or doing too much. We're now, instead of working in a healthy fashion, you are now working in areas that maybe God never really intended for you. So being able to have that, again, balance to say no to, like, not necessarily saying no. You're not saying no to God. You're saying no to your time, like to things to make sure you're healthy, but still working. And if everyone did that, there would be no loose ends. Like, the whole church would operate, the church family would operate healthily. The problem is you have a lot of people sitting in slothfulness and idleness, while you have a small minority that's having to pull the load for everybody, in most settings, not necessarily in our church, but.
Well, that's also another thing. And that's a good, from a pastor's perspective, from a congregation, what would you call us? A member's perspective. If you go to the church, like in the Bible, it says, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat.
Right.
So if you're going to that church, or you're getting fed, you're being taught, and you're being fed spiritual, right. What would you call that? But whatever, you're getting fed. You owe that church work.
Yeah.
And that is your church. That's where you've invested your, you want to grow spiritually and all that. You owe that church something. Now, you pay your tithes and all that, but that's not where it ends. So when they have projects out there and they need volunteers, they need help, it's part of your responsibility to do what you can and to fill in where you're able to do that and contribute. So
yeah, and even when you think of Christ, like, had every reason in the world to come when he came here to have all, feast and banquets and royalty, and, but he chose to come here as a servant. And, if that's truly your heart in volunteering, is wanting to serve and be a servant, then, it's not a worker. You don't get anything when you work. You don't, when you serve, you get something when you work. And so when you serve, having that heart of intentionality and just having the heart of love and being willing to be inconvenienced, because there's plenty of times where Christ is, walking down the road and heading towards a city, and all of a sudden somebody comes up with leprosy, somebody comes up with a disease, and the disciples will say, "Hey, we're heading this way. We don't have time for this." And then so he always makes time, and so being willing to be inconvenienced in the volunteering and having the right motivation, right heart behind that.
Exactly. And let me just say this too, as we get on to our bonus and final question. The church is not a building. Okay. We are collectively the church, and the church is just that. First of all, the church doesn't exist for ourselves. The church exists for him. So whenever whenever we're doing things, it's not for ourselves and it's not even for our own gain. You're doing it for the King, and you're working because, out of the joy that it is just to be like Jesus, to serve. I will say though, that again, that whenever we are operating and walking step by step with the King and serving the one that's in front of us, regardless of, like you said, if it's an inconvenience or not, when the door of opportunity opens itself, we will find fulfillment. Even in the midst of that, we will not necessarily be burnt out. We will find peace. We'll find, because again, we see the harvest. We're working for the harvest. And so I think even as you work and as you serve, if you understand that it's not necessarily about a church building, or it's not necessarily about like what can we gain as a church, incorporation or something. It's, growing the harvest, like reaping the harvest, continuing to grow the harvest for God, to be his hands and feet. I think we'll find a lot of fulfillment in that work.
That's good. Well, we certainly thank you for joining us today. We thank you for being a part of this conversation about slothfulness and idleness, and something we don't really hear about too much. But if you've been slothful and listening to our podcast, then I encourage you to go back and check out the rest of them.
That's good.
But no, we love you. We thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay sharp. We'll talk to you soon.